hobby family? It is your boy K-Dub, and this is K-Dub's High Five. 5 rapid-fire questions with your favorite hobby faces. And today we bring in the Michael Jordan of wrestling cards, my friends. Yes, he is David Peck at DPeck100 on Twitter. Also on Instagram, it's Wrestling Stars 1982.
1982 Wrestling All-Stars.
1982 Wrestling All-Stars on Instagram. I'll tag that all in the descriptions. How are you doing today, David?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. It's I got the day off. The stock market's closed, and just had a good workout at the gym. And now I'm on with you, so I'm looking forward to having a good time.
Heck yeah, heck yeah. Well, how it works, man, I got 5 questions. They're all hobby related. Ready to take on the high five?
Let's do it.
All right, man. David Peck, the Michael Jordan of wrestling cards, DPeck100. Kind of describe, if you will, what you feel like your role is in the social media hobby or in the sports card world.
Well, it's been a wild ride because back in 2010, I ended up joining the Collector's Universe. That's the PSA message board, just by chance. I had gotten into trying to track down more information on Mike Tyson's Panini sticker from Italy, and I came across a thread where I had won the sticker, I don't know, a week earlier in a late night bidding war, and the guy was like, "Oh, I got shilled," and so I created an account. I'm like, "No, you didn't get shilled. I was the guy that won it," and so they sort of it morphed in, what do you collect? And I said wrestling cards. And so I'm probably most known for taking on the sports card world back then, as far as people hated on wrestling cards to no end. And as we so I spent like probably 10 years on message boards, and then when I saw that Gary V and some of these people were talking about trading cards on Twitter, I went ahead and brought my game there. And so I spent a lot of time just trying to promote the wrestling card hobby. I don't buy a lot of cards these days, so I like to show off my cards and just kind of interact with everybody. So we have a real good time on there.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, wrestling cards are your thing. Were you a wrestler in your past, or what is like the draw to wrestling cards?
No, definitely not a wrestler. I basically, I grew up in Orlando, Florida, and I think a lot of people I was born in '79. Matter of fact, I'll be 45 on Monday.
Okay.
And so in the early '80s, well, in the '70s too, I mean, wrestling was like religion in Florida. And so, as soon as we'd get home from church, we raced to turn on the TV and watch championship wrestling from Florida. Yeah. And then when Hogan, sort of took over the universe in '85, and the WWF started working with NBC, we got to see the WWF on TV. And so, I was a Hulkamaniac, and just stayed a wrestling fan. And for a long, I'm still a wrestling fan, but I landed on wrestling cards by chance. Brock Lesnar is my favorite athlete. When in 2009, when he was in UFC, that was like a big deal. We'd have UFC parties, and took it very seriously. And so I just, after UFC 100, went to eBay and I said, let me see if Brock has some football cards. I felt like I remember he did. Mm-hmm. And then I bought some of his wrestling cards. And the question that got it all started is, I knew there was a 85 Topps Hogan that we had sort of chased a little bit in '85, but in '85, money was so tight that buying WWF packs versus Topps or Fleer baseball just wasn't a big option. So I said, let me see what an 85 Topps Hogan goes for. And I stumbled across a 1982 Wrestling All-Stars Hogan, and the rest is history. So started buying those, and became an addict pretty quick.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was at WrestleMania 19 in Seattle when Lesnar, I don't know if you remember this, when he went off the top rope and he did a backflip, and he landed right on his head. It was one of the craziest things that I've ever seen in person in real life. And he just pops up, and I talked to a guy afterwards, and he said that because of the size of Lesnar's traps, that's the only thing that saved him. You and me do that, like, we're done, game over. But
Totally.
his athletic ability was incredible. I mean, still to this day, but when he first came into the WWE, it was pretty insane to watch a guy that size do what he was doing. So
Oh, big time. And the thing about Brock is, I mean, his athleticism is second to none
mhm.
for a guy that size.
Mm.
The other thing is, he just had such a freaky build
Yeah,
where when, there's a lot of debate today in the wrestling fan space. I'm a traditionalist. I like to see guys that are jacked. I want to see the larger than life stuff. Um, a lot of people, I weigh 175 pounds, right? Like I see, there's guys my size now that wrestle. So, and I'm not into that. I want to see some, it's a show. I want to see something that's impressive. So he's just incredible.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, let's talk about some of your like who would you kind of credit as some of your influences as far as getting into sports cards and then maybe into like the wrestling space? Like, is there anyone out there that kind of turned you on to wrestling cards as a whole?
No, I tell you what I will. I gave this some thought earlier, and Um, so wrestling cards, obviously wrestling is a scripted sport, right? So one of the beefs that the guys online had when I started posting on the message board was that they were non-sport cards, right? And they're like, this is the sports card section. It should be over in non-sport. And thankfully PSA let me keep posting there, which because it not only did it help the hobby tremendously, but it gave me a lot of entertainment.
For sure.
And so there was a guy. So the closest thing to the Wrestling All Stars that I saw was the 1959 Fleer Three Stooges, because if you look at non-sports sets, that was probably like the pinnacle.
Yeah.
And the 1982 Wrestling All Stars, at least in my view, especially back in 2010 or not, 9, 10, were what I felt were the pinnacle of wrestling cards. I didn't really feel like anything compared. So there's a guy named Richard Cohen that was on top of the PSA set registry. And he wasn't just on top, he had like the top 10 sets. I mean, so he didn't just buy one copy of each card. He bought the highest rated he could, and he bought multiples.
Hmm.
So when I started really thinking about, okay, how can we get this wrestling card thing over? How do I put my best foot forward? I just decided, you know what? These are the cards that I think are the best. I'm not going to settle for just one copy. I'm going to buy as many nice copies as I can.
Yeah.
So if you look at the 1982 Wrestling All Stars Series A, if you look at the PSA set registry, I think I want to say 13 sets on there. So it's a lot. And so, needless to say, he's, who I would credit. There
Yeah.
were no known wrestling card collectors in the sports card world. Maybe the closest was Rob England, that he goes by Wrestling Card King. But, it was such a tiny niche, and it was kind of taboo to
Mm.
talk about because you were just exposing yourself to the hate from the baseball card guys and
Yeah.
hockey and so on. So I kind of patterned it after that, and then basically, I saw that there was, at least in my mind, a lot of opportunity to branch out and buy different cards, and so I tried to buy as many what we the rookie card debate is so complicated in wrestling. I mean, if you take like Andre the Giant, Beckett has his 1987 tops as his rookie card. Well, he has material that's 18 years earlier from
Mm.
Japan, right?
Yeah.
So we is it rookie card? Is it first appearance? You pick the name, but I tried to just go and find as many early cards of the stars as I could, and it's worked out good.
Absolutely, man. Well, I definitely think you've blazed the path for many people today, and it's really neat to see kind of how it's grown, and to now it's kind of like I mean, it's on the shelves with all the big three sports. So very very
Yep.
cool. All right, man. Well, I got to know this. I know what you collect, but I also know you got a big interest. If you had to pick a Grail item for yourself, as far as something for your collection that you'll never let go, what would that item be and why?
I'll tell you, I have, and I'm sort of proud of this. I've got 30 copies of Hulk Hogan's 1982 Wrestling All Stars card,
Okay.
and yeah, which is neat. So I did sell my first copy that I got in 2021. I did a private sale through Golden, and I let that one go. But the reason is I had three nines, and but I have one nine in particular that is it's just awesome. I mean, if it had a little bit better top to bottom centering, you could argue it would be a 10.
Hmm.
It's actually it's kind of unfortunate what's happened. My probably two best wrestling cards people made fakes of, and so if you go if you look up the cert number on this particular Hogan, it shows flagged. Same with my Andre 9. And so, which is fine by me. It's still my PSA registry. PSA wants me to get it reholdered, but I just don't want to give up the that cert. If you go on their website, it's on their website. It's been in the SMR 3 times. So there's no motivation to let them swap it out. I think the other big challenge with that, and the same with the Andre, is you can't just go find a replacement. Like if you have even a Michael Jordan, let's say 86 Fleer, they're out there. There's something like 321 PSA 10s. So let's say that they needed a reholder of 10 and they damaged it. Well, they can replace it. You cannot find the quality of these cards, and you just can't even find the cards for sale. So that's probably my favorite card.
Nice.
It's Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, all right. Well, I'm interested now because I mean, it doesn't sound like you rip a ton of product. But if you had to pick the box of choice for wrestling cards to open yourself, what box would you open and why?
Well, I'll tell you, I've ripped a lot over the years.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
a lot. So a lot of my collection is self-submitted.
Oh,
So
cool. Oh, right
um,
on.
probably, I think it would be easier to answer my best rip of all time.
Let's do it.
These 82 All-Stars are sealed packs, right? They're just cellophane packs.
Yeah.
So I've had some good success with those. I've had some bad success. But in terms of like ripping wax, I bought a 1985 Topps WWF rack box, and I got that for $450. And it's kind of a funny story because I had already purchased an 85 Topps Hogan 10, actually from a guy on the PSA message board. And I won it on eBay at like a little over $300, which is pretty cool. So when I was opening the rack box, my goal was to try to find a Roddy Piper PSA 10. And so I ended up hitting two of those. But
Nice.
this box I mean, it was just loaded. I pulled 13 yellow Hogans. I
Oh,
mean, I couldn't even, I mean, it was just like, because a lot of times when you rip stuff, like, you get a lopsided box and it's not the cards you want.
for sure.
This was a lopsided box where it was like, I'm getting another one, I'm getting another one. So I ended up getting 5 PSA 9s of Hogan and a PSA 10.
Wow.
And so in 2021, when the hobby blew up, I ended up selling my first 85 Topps PSA 10 to Steve Aoki. And so I kept the one that I self-submitted, because I felt like that was it was awesome.
Yeah.
And you know, uh it's no secret, you see me with drinks and stuff. I like to party. So I was sitting there partying while I'm ripping the box. It was, I mean, it was amazing. So, but as far as like wax today, if I had to pick something in wrestling, it's kind of tough because the 2002 WWE Royal Rumble is where Brock Lesnar, John Cena,
Yeah.
Bautista, and Randy Orton are. I've ripped, I don't know, 7 or 8 boxes of that. And that's kind of a anticlimactic rip because they're sequenced. So you kind of know, oh, great, here comes, the Cena, here comes the Lesnar. And whereas, like I'm not saying that 85 Tops, it was just like, I mean, it was just like, wow, Hogan, Hogan, Hogan. And I ended up getting, I think I got 7 Pipers, no, maybe even more. I got 210s, 5.9s, and so it's wrestling now. Of course, there's some pretty cool modern products, but my focus is generally on the older cards.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, you said that you've ripped a lot. I mean, what percentage of your collection would you say of your favorites would you say that are self-submitted by you to PSA, like pulled and submitted? Like, I mean, how much of your collection did you actually open and submit?
Well, I bought a lot of them raw. So like the 82 All Stars, for
Got it. Okay.
example, you used to see a lot of like set breaks where, somebody would list the whole set raw and
Yeah.
I'd end up winning like, 20 of the cards. There's
Got it.
36 in a set, or I'd
Yeah.
win 10 or whatever. As far as a percentage, I've got close to 2,000 PSA graded cards. I probably would say uh, maybe 800 of those are me. I'm just kind of guessing,
Yeah.
but I mean a lot.
Yeah.
I've a lot,
I
and
would say more than
what I
yeah, much more than
yeah,
the
well
average.
what Oh, well, I mean, and I sold stuff along the way to help,
Yeah,
offset the cost. For
sure.
me, what I learned early on was the economics of submitting cards was just unmatchable. I'd never seen, so I'm a financial advisor. I've got
Mm,
a degree in economics, and I just had never seen anything like it. I couldn't believe that for $5 or $7 or $15, you could send something to PSA. They slap a label on it, confirm the condition, and it was worth like 10 or 20 times what I paid.
sure.
I just, so I was like, I like this. So,
Yeah.
and I've got actually, I'm kind of lazy right now, but I'm trying to kick myself in the butt to get my submission out because I've got a lot of signed cards I want to sub, and I've got some raw ones, and I've been procrastinating. So
Oh, the story of many collectors, the procrastination process. So,
exactly.
all right, man. Well, my last question for you here, like as you look at wrestling, I mean, it's now a part of the hobby. Like, how do you see it meshing modernly with kind of the big three of basketball, football, and baseball?
Well, I tell you, the wrestling card world has grown just exponentially.
Mm,
You have seen, and I think like the 2022 Panini Prism release was, it's sort of a controversial release because you know older collectors like me, sort of warned people that
mm,
some of those early prices on wax and the cards were really not sustainable, right? And
yeah.
so unfortunately that sort of created a divide in the wrestling card space,
Mm,
and so that sort of I guess exists. But I think that on the margin Panini has been great for wrestling cards because it really brought in a lot of crossover buyers. You have a lot of people that never would have opened wrestling cards that said, yeah, okay, this is pretty cool. I'll give it a shot.
for sure.
And Fanatics taking over the license, they're going to put a lot behind wrestling cards. I know for a fact that they feel that there is huge growth. It's one of the segments that can grow. So I don't think it would be unrealistic to think wrestling cards will ever be as heavily collected as say baseball or basketball. But you take like hockey for example. Hockey's not necessarily heavily collected. The number of card submissions for wrestling to PSA might potentially rival hockey
Mm,
at this point. So I think that the future's bright for it. I'm hoping that Fanatics puts out some really cool material. I just saw last night online that I guess at the in Philadelphia, the WWE is going to have their own little wrestling, not little, but wrestling convention.
okay.
To the best of my knowledge, The Rock was signing stuff for 1,500. I saw that last night. I hope that's not a AI generated photo. But
Mm,
that said, if you get somebody like The Rock in a Topps Fanatics product, sky's the limit. And so we've seen just early on, like the 82 All Star Hogan or the 85 Topps Hogan was kind of the card that maybe somebody that didn't really collect wrestling cards would buy just because Hogan's an icon, but they didn't really go deep into it. And so I think that you've seen a lot more of that. But like I said, I just don't envision it ever being as collected as traditional sports because, traditional sports, I mean, at the end of the day, we can debate whether it's real or not, I guess, these days, but you like to think it's real. And where, WWE, I mean, you're just at the mercy of the bookers. You could be great, but if they don't see it in you, you're not going anywhere.
For sure. Yeah. No, I think that it's going to be an interesting like crossover, but I definitely think if you can get, I think you got to touch on every aspect of the collect. Like for me, big '90s wrestling fan, and if you can incorporate those into the modern stuff, I think you can really check a lot of boxes of just the average collectors of baseball, football, and basketball. So I'm excited as well. I've really enjoyed seeing what I'm seeing with the Panini stuff, and like you said, sky's the limit with Fanatics. So but I know if they were to get someone like The Rock signing and stuff, I mean, it's going to draw in not only wrestling fans, but I think just fans of pop culture as well. So,
Oh, big time. And it's funny. Early on, when people were hating so aggressively on wrestling cards, I just said, look, these are pop culture icons,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
and you just and what's really helped wrestling cards is the social media, not like message boards, but I'm talking about like, Twitter or Facebook, Instagram. I mean, how cool is it that people can interact with The Rock
for sure.
and it's actually him,
Yep.
you
I
know?
100% agree with you on that. I think social media has changed fan and athlete experiences because of that piece. Yeah. All right, man. I got a bonus question with you because I got to know this. Okay. Your Rushmore for wrestlers in past, present, future, or not past, present. Who would you say are the top 4 wrestlers of all time?
So Hulk Hogan is,
Okay.
in my opinion, just has to be there,
Yeah.
right? I think Ric Flair has to be there. Dwayne the Rock Johnson, okay, this current run that he's on right now
Yes.
is just unbelievable. I mean, he's not only made wrestling fun, but the thing about The Rock is, he looks like a superhuman. He's like,
Agreed.
I
100%.
mean, it's just unbelievable. And there's nobody that has the command of the audience. There's nobody that has the charisma. I mean, he's just unbelievable. The 4 spot is so tough because a lot of people, you could argue Stone Cold Steve Austin just for argument's sake.
That was mine.
If you, yeah, well, if you talk to like say Ric Flair believes that Steve Austin's number 1 of all time.
Hmm.
And I think he probably secretly thinks he's number 1, but has to say Stone Cold. I always though, the challenge with wrestling is this: is all the guys I just named were the best entertainers.
Hmm.
The best wrestler is Terry Funk.
Okay.
Nobody compares to Terry Funk. So I kind of sometimes interchange Austin and Terry Funk in the 4 spot, just from the standpoint that there's nobody that was a more diverse
Hmm.
wrestler than Terry Funk. I mean, actually, one of my favorite things I ever got to do in life was I had a happy hour with Ric Flair. Right, I mean, I paid for it. It was a little private signing. And so we got to talking, and it's interesting. I'm telling you this today because living in Orlando, there's a lot of wrestlers, and
Hmm.
I was working out at the gym a little bit earlier, and Charlotte Flair was right behind me.
Okay.
Well, this happy hour, I was supposed to only get an hour, but at the 52-minute mark, she frantically calls her dad, and he's like, "David, I'm so sorry. I've got to take this call." And she had gotten in a car accident, and this was right before she got called up, to the main roster. So anyway, so when me and Rick are talking, we talked about him and Terry Funk's the match. I want to say it's 1989 Clash of the Champions. But when Terry Funk came out and pile drove Ric Flair through the table, like you were scared. I mean, it
Huh.
was like,
Sure.
I mean, it was scary. Like you thought, I don't know, man. And so, I mean, if you just think, then fast forward, he did all those crazy matches in Japan with
No.
barbed wire and
Hmm.
so on. And if you go back to the 70s, he was NWA champion, and his matches in Japan, like his punches, his selling, nobody can perform like Terry Funk. So I don't know. He's sort of my honorary member.
Well, we'll put him in there. Longevity wise, I don't know if there's a better name than that. So, all right, man. Hey, we cleared the list. You can high five at the end of high five. Throw it up. Boom.
Oh,
Hey, check out David Peck on Twitter and Instagram. I will link all his information in the description of this video. Also, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitter X at Mr. K-Dub. Shout out to our high five endorsers, Midwest Box Breaks, and LJ's Card Shop. David, man, it was so great. I'm now like so interested in wrestling cards because I found you on Twitter. So I really appreciate all you do for the sports cards community of the wrestling cards. But in general, man, you got an amazing collection. Keep showing it off.
all right. Good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Y'all take care. We'll catch you next time on the next High Five.